Greetings, and in this video we're going to continue from the last video where we developed our own dApp and we tested that dApp in a local environment on Point Network. Today we're going to deploy a dApp to the Point Network Testnet using the Point Network Alpha software. So let's head over to a browser now and we'll open up the Point Network website, pointnetwork.io. And in the top right corner, you can see there is a button to download Alpha. If you click on that, it will take you to a download page. You notice that there are different versions of the software available, and it should automatically detect your operating system. In my case, it's Mac OS. So I'm just going to click on this to download the installer. It will ask me to download it, and I choose a directory, and it will download via my browser download. Awesome, that's downloaded now, so I can click here and open in Finder, and then I can see the downloaded tar file, so I just double click that to expand it, and I see the .dmg file. I double click that to open it, and I'll bring the window in to the screen here, and you'll see that all you need to do is just drag this into your applications folder like so. And once you have done that, it should be available for you to run. Now, how you run applications is depending on your system, but in my system, I use the Spotlight search, and I can just type point, and it will open the Point application. Now, the first thing it will ask you, because you've downloaded this from the internet, just ask you to open it, and you click open. Great, it's opened this window now. The first thing you'll see is this disclaimer. So you do want to be sure to read through this disclaimer to make sure that you know about the software and how it works and the exact sort of implications of using this software. But once you understand, then you click to agree and continue by clicking this button right here. And that takes you to the Point installer. And this is a piece of software that will run through and install the different dependencies of Point Network to be able to run on your system. And it will install the Point engine, the live profile for Point browser, the Point SDK, the Point browser itself, and the Point uninstaller. So click Start Installation to begin the installation process. Now, this process shouldn't take too long, but you may, if you have a slower internet connection, it might take a little bit more time. If you do have any issues during this stage, you can always reach out to support. I'll just let this run and then we'll carry on. I'll just scroll the window down so we can see the final component being installed. Once the installation is complete, the installation window will close automatically and a new window will open, which I'll bring into view here now. So we can close out this window here, by the way, and we can close this out. And let's collapse the browser as well, just so we get this on the screen. So at this point here, the dashboard has now opened and you're presented with two choices. One is to create a new seed phrase. Essentially, this is to register a new identity on the network, which is what most people will be doing at this point. Or you may already have a seed phrase that you want to use. Perhaps you've installed Point Network on another machine and you want to bring your seed phrase over to this new machine. Now, in this video, I'm going to generate a new seed phrase and register a new identity. So I click on that button and then I see this screen here. What I need to do now is just click the generate button and it will generate a number of, generate a 12-word secret phrase for us to use for our identity registration. Now, what we need to do is copy this phrase so that we can then add it to a text editor. This comes in handy And we should probably save this as well, depends on how you do this, your self-manage. You can always put these seed phrases into your own password manager if you wish. So for this demo, I'm just going to copy it into this text editor and click continue. And now you need to add the secret phrase back into this window here. So word number 5 is tube. So we're going to type that in, tube. Word number 6 is program. So we're going to type that in here. And word number 12 is rice. Once you've confirmed, you can click login. So confirm and login. This starts up the dashboard like so, and informs us that it's starting Point Network. And then it also brings up this browser where we can register our identity. So let's put this here so we can see. So as you can see in this step, we need to register an identity. We've got an address, but we don't have an actual identity associated with that address. Now, in this video, I'm going to register the identity Rienblock. Rienblock is the name of my YouTube channel and my online school, and I thought it was appropriate to go ahead and register this identity on Point Network. And the cool thing is that this is validated using a Twitter account with the same name, which I have. So let's try this out. Rienblock is the name that I want to register. And then as you can see, it pops up with a message to say that it looks like it's already on Twitter. And so what we've got to do is we've just got to basically post this tweet here that it's already given us on our Twitter feed. And it's got to be the Twitter feed with the same name. So in this case, I've got to own the Twitter handle Rienblock, which I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste that into my Twitter feed. So I happen to have Twitter open up here, and I can click tweet and I can paste in the tweet that I just made. And I don't need to change anything. I don't want to change anything. The main thing is that it's got to have this URL in here so that the activation can work. So I'm going to tweet that to the world, and that's done. And now if I go back to my Point browser, and what I've got to do is I've got to paste the URL of that tweet in here. So I'm going to grab that status URL here. So I've opened the tweet in Web 2, if you like, on Twitter. And I've got the URL here, and I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that in here. And then I'm going to click the check tweet button. Are you sure you want to be known as Rienblock? Sure. Let's see what happens. Awesome, it worked. I'm now authenticated and logged in as Rienblock on Point Network using the alpha version of the software connected to Testnet. This means now that I can use all of the applications that are deployed onto Testnet. I can check the identities, I can use Point Social, Point Mail, and all of these different applications that are already existing on the network. But what we want to do today is deploy our own application. Now, one thing that is interesting to know is that if you go to, let's go here, and we can go to Point Identities Rienblock, and I can take a look at my own identity here. This is essentially the meta page for my identity. And as you can see here, there is a number of different things that we can see, but there's nothing actually added here. There's no entries for IKV store, And if you followed the last video, you'll see what we mean by this. This is basically information or metadata about the identity. Now, here we've got a domain space and it's a URL. So if I click that, it says domain not found. And this is because we haven't deployed anything yet, and this is what I want to do. I want to deploy something to this domain space in Point Network. And so I was thinking, why not deploy my website, the remblock.com website? I will deploy it to remblock.point. And this is a great example because this is a static website. It's actually built using Jekyll. And so all I have to do is build the site and then deploy that site to Point Network. So that's what we're going to do. In order to deploy a dApp to Point Network, you will need to install the Point engine using the repository. So you need to clone the Point engine repository and install and build and then run that from the built repository. This is currently the way that we can deploy dApps to Point Network. And so what we're going to do is we're going to deploy remblock.point to Point Network so that it becomes available under this domain, under remblock.point. Now, currently I'm logged into the Point Network dashboard using my remblock identifier, identity, and this is my address. And what I'm going to do in order to deploy my site to this identity is I'm going to first of all just close the dashboard. I'm going to quit Point Network and Point Browser. So I just click quit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my console here. And as you can see, I've already got the Point Network repository cloned. We did this in the previous video. And so you just need to go to the GitHub repository for Point Network and clone the Point Network repository. This is the Point engine. Once you've done that, you then need to run npm I to install all the dependencies. Awesome, that's done, and then we can clear that out. Now you can run npm run build, and that will build the Point Network software into distribution so that we can run this. Awesome. And finally, we just run npm run start. Now, when we run npm run start like this, this starts up the node in the default configuration, which is to connect to Ynet testnet. So we are now running this node and it's connected to the testnet environment. And that means that we can now deploy our dApp to this environment. So I need another console window, which is right here, and I'm going to deploy the dApp using the Point command line tool that comes with Point Network. And so before we do that, I want to just show you what the directory structure looks like one level below. And in there you can see that we have the dApp that we want to deploy, which is rem.block.point. Now I'm going to just flip over to another console window and just show you this a little bit more. So if I open up the directory here just to show you the files, you can see that we've got the mandatory and required point.deploy.json file. So let's take a look at that. That's point.deploy.json. You can see that it contains the various keys and values that we need to deploy this. So one thing that is of note is the target is remblock.point, right? So that has to match the domain that you want to deploy to. And the second thing to note is that we want the root directory in this case to be in app/_site. And that is where the application is built. That's where the static site is built by, in this case, by Jekyll. Okay, so that is important to set those two variables. In this case, they're the most important things I need to set for this particular deployment. Now, the other thing is the routes JSON. This is also required by Point Network. And as you can see here, what we have is one route, which is basically the root route, and that routes to the index.html page. Now, as I said, this is a Jekyll site, and I'm not going to go into how you would build Jekyll applications. That's a different topic altogether. The main point is that it doesn't matter what engine you use to build your static site. We can deploy it once it's built. So if we look into the app directory here, you can see that it is a Jekyll website. And again, this is actually, by the way, this is open source. You can see on the ReMBlock GitHub repository this site. You might be interested just to quickly take a look at what is in _site, and it is essentially the built application by Jekyll. And this is what we're going to be deploying. So it includes the index.html, which is part of the root route, and also all of the assets which are referenced in the index.html page, right? These are the assets like the CSS and the JavaScript that are used on the site, as well as images. So all of these will be deployed to Point Network when we run our deployment script. So let's go back to the terminal where we've got Point Network, and I'll run the script to deploy. So just as a quick reminder, we've already started in this terminal window an instance of Point Engine that is running in default mode, which essentially connects to Ynet testnet. So in order to deploy a site, we run the command line tool point like so. It's an executable, so that's why we use this / syntax. And then we have a sub command which is deploy. And then I want to deploy ReMBlock, and as you know, it's located one level down. So that is the command that we will run in this case. Note that we don't need the -- contracts command in this example because there are no contracts that we need to deploy in this dApp. So I'll hit enter and we should see the deployment start. Awesome, so it looks like the deployment has completed. So now what we want to do obviously is try it out. We want to load up our application. The way to do that is to firstly stop the node running in this environment, because we're going to go back to the dashboard and start the node in the usual sort of end user way. So let's head back over here and let's open up the dashboard again. As we can see, it's starting the node and we're in. And now we can check ReMBlock.point. So let's open up a new tab, https ReMBlock.point, and we should see the website, the dApp that we just deployed, essentially. Very simple dApp because it's a static website, but it gives you an example of deploying dApps. And there we go. That is the same website that we have at ReMBlock.com is now deployed to ReMBlock.point as a fully decentralized application. Now, of course, I could continue to develop this application and put some more features on it and build out all kinds of different things, but right now this is a very basic application. Now, one thing you might be wondering is there is a link here to free blockchain tutorials, and that goes to YouTube. So if I click that from a Web3 browser, what is going to happen? Well, as you can see, the Web3 browser, Point browser, detected that this is a Web2 link. And so it gives you this notification to say, hey, do you want to open this link? And if you click on the link here, it will open that up in a Web2 browser. And as you can see, it opened up ReMBlock, which is the YouTube page for ReMBlock. And so that's how you deploy a dApp to Web3, by simply following the steps that we outlined here. Remember, you can deploy any application to Web3. You just build the site and then you run the deploy script, and you set up your point deploy JSON and your routes JSON accordingly. and then you can deploy that using the approach that we showed in this video today. In the previous video, we showed you how you can test and build your application in a local environment. So if you're going to start building dApps for Point Network, it's worthwhile following the steps in the previous video, which I'll link in the description, before you come on to this video where you deploy your dApp to Point Network to be shared with everyone to use. So I wish you the best of luck in your journey for building decentralized applications and deploying them onto Point Network, and I'll see you over there. Have a great time. Bye-bye.